Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop Fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running.
It's hard to believe that we've been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
So many great conversations over the years about so many great movies. All that said, producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes.
Becoming a Next Reel member gives you access to all sorts of additional and exclusive content. Plus, you're helping us keep the lights on. Just head to thenextreel.com/membership, where you can learn more about becoming a member, which costs a measly $5 a month, practically the same as one fancy coffee drink. And you get so much more.
Every month, we record a bonus episode exclusively for members. Those episodes cover movies from whatever series we're covering at the moment, or add to previous series.
Some movies we've covered that only members get to hear us discuss include The Blues Brothers,
The Russia House,
Naked Lunch,
Independence Day,
The Hot Rock,
and Relic, the better one. Plus, members get to vote on what we're going to discuss for those episodes.
We also record additional pre- and post-show content in regular episodes that only members get to hear.
Like conversations about similarly themed movies.
And answering listener questions from our live member chat.
Speaking of our live member chat, we record almost all of our episodes in Discord, where members can chat right along with us live.
Members get access to other members-only channels in our Discord community as well. On top of all that, members get all episodes a full week earlier than everyone else in a private Next Reel feed just for them that includes all the shows in the Next Reel family. The Next Reel, the Film Board,
movies we like, Sitting in the Dark, and more new projects on the way.
To top it all off, members don't have to listen to ads. We've already eliminated those annoying, dynamically inserted ads that, let's face it, we all hated.
We are listening to you.
We love podcasting for a living, and those ads help to pay the bills. Now, we're counting on you, dear listener.
We promise. We aren't going back to those terrible, dynamically inserted ads that don't relate to us at all. All we ask is that you consider supporting the Next Reel family of podcasts with a membership.
Again, it's $5 per month or $55 per year. Just head to thenextreel.com/membership.
thenextreel.com/membership. Get your access to early, ad-free episodes with bonus content, member bonus episodes, and access to member channels and live streams in Discord by signing up today. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
We're gearing up for our next season to begin.
Season 13, to be exact.
That's right. And all season long, we'll be looking at past awards categories and discussing the nominated films.
We're kicking off our new season with a series looking at the 1940 Academy Award Best Picture nominees. But back in season 5, we discussed 6 of the 10 nominees.
Because of that, we're releasing those episodes now so that you can get ready for this series.
That's right. We're going to release those episodes from 2015 and 2016 in which we discussed Gone with the Wind,
Goodbye, Mr. Chips,
Mr. Smith Goes to Washington,
Ninotchka,
Stagecoach,
and The Wizard of Oz.
And to top it off, we'll be streamlining those older episodes a bit so they're just focusing on the films themselves.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you enjoy the show. Andy.
Yes?
So you're a stinker, right?
Hear ye, hear ye. Alexander Wolcott, the town crier.
This is Wolcott speaking. The town crier coming with good news to the microphone. This broadcast is a piece of personal testimony. I have just undergone the memorable experience of witnessing the best moving picture I have ever seen. I can testify that no moving picture ever stirred me as deeply as this one. It is called Goodbye, Mr. Chips.
Never be afraid, Chips, that you can't do anything you've made up your mind to. As long as you believe in yourself, you can go as far as you dream. Certainly you will be headmaster if you want to.
But I am here only to testify that in my own experience, the most moving of all moving pictures is the one called Goodbye, Mr. Chips.
Goodbye, Mr. Chips. Goodbye.
Goodbye, Mr. Chips, Andy. Number 4 in this year's 1939 series, the film directed by Sam Wood, based on the book Goodbye, Mr. Chips by James Hilton. It is the story of an then aging teacher and former headmaster of a boarding school established in 1492.
Wow.
Who recalls his career and personal life over the decades. Not centuries. He was only there for a part of that time.
He didn't start.
He didn't start
when Columbus discovered America.
No.
Quote, discovered
Quote,
America.
yes. Heavy quotes. Film has quite a pedigree, Andrew. This was voted number 72 on the greatest British film ever list by the British Film Institute. That's pretty good. British have put out a lot of films, so number 72, you've got to think, hey, people like this film. Do you agree?
Number 72, so that puts it right between Elizabeth, 1998's film by Shekhar Kapoor, which I love, and A Room with a View by James Ivory, which I enjoy quite a bit.
Oh, I love that
one.
Oh, I do.
I'll let you love that one.
You can love Elizabeth. I will love
Elizabeth.
Room with a View. Oh,
there you go.
Goodness.
70 is Goldfinger, Elizabeth, Goodbye, Mr. Chips, A Room with a View, The Day of the Jackal, The Cruel Sea, Billy Liar, Oliver, Peeping Tom, Far from the Madding Crowd.
So all of those films are terrific. Going in, you feel like I feel like I'm gonna roll the dice and I'm gonna come out a winner.
Yeah, and I ended up liking this film. I didn't love it. I enjoyed the story. I enjoy this kind of story though, so I think that made it easy for me. And but in the end, I was like, okay, yeah. And then I found that it kind of flitted from my mind rather quickly.
I kind of had that same experience, but it was funny. I watched it just this afternoon, and it maybe is a bit overlong. It comes at just a hair under 2 full hours, and it tells a long story of his life. They make some really interesting choices about the pieces of his life that they're going to be talking about and the pieces they're going to just skip right through. But in the end, I found myself thinking, okay, I'm not all that moved by it, and it was good. It was a good story, and our major characters were, I thought, served the film really well. And suddenly, the film ends, and I realize I'm like on the edge of tears.
And I had a moment too where it struck me. And mine wasn't at the end. Mine was actually a little earlier when he's reading the names of the people who have died in the war. And it was just it was the same thing. I mean, I had a lot of ups and downs, kind of like, okay, I'm kind of into it. Okay, I'm kind of losing interest. It just kind of was floated along for me. And sometimes I felt the pacing was actually really streamlined, considering it's like, 60 some years of storytelling. And then sometimes I'm like, well, it's a little sluggish right here. But then I hit that point and it's just like practically, just welling up because of the moment. So I think there's something inherent in a film like this where it's kind of that a story. I saw somebody word it online, a most memorable person story, where you get connected to this person and you see a lot of ins and outs of their life, and sometimes it's more interesting and sometimes it's a little more boring, kind of like life anyway. And that moment for me hit at this point where he's reading these names, trying to stay strong, and but he knows all of them, and some of them are much more dear to him, some of them aren't, and it was just a very touching, poignant thing in the film to see. And I don't know, I really kind of connected with that, and I think that's something with why I like these sorts of films that really kind of tap into that about a person, and you really get a good sense of who this person is.
Well, a person, but particularly for me, it's teachers. Teacher stories slay me. And it's whatever you want to say about like Mr. Holland or what was the other one I liked so much with Frodo in it?
Oh, with Frodo? That's a different one.
No, Andy, it's not Elijah Wood. It's Tobey Maguire and Michael Douglas in The Wonder Boys.
Oh, yeah. It's one of my top 5 favorite films.
See, what you don't know is that I just cut out a whole lot of the show of us trying to remember who this is. For somebody saying that this is their top 5 favorite film, you should have come to that sooner and not made me look like a boob.
I'm not going to come to that if you're bringing up Elijah Wood.
I get Elijah Wood and Tobey Maguire confused, so sue me. Look at him. Tobey Maguire could have been Frodo every bit.
I want to cast a movie with the two of them as brothers now.
Brother Hobbits.
Brother Hobbits at a school where aliens are the teachers.
Established in 1492.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
This is it. This
is a game changer is what they say in the business.
But it's got to somehow we got to write it to last 60
Pivot.
years.
Yeah. Yeah, there and back again, Andy. There and back again.
And again.
It's
and again.
practically
and again.
writes itself. Anyway, it's this whole thing about professors, like teachers, and I think maybe we have a particular affinity to the role, but these movies just slay me. Every single time, and so this one I think is it. I look at it quite fondly. It's a serviceable film. It's long and a touch slow, but I find I connect with the characters in a pleasant way. Right? It's not it's not an overly emotional kind of connection, but it's pleasant. There's nothing I look at and think, even their conversation on top of, Everest. they were in Austria, I guess.
I think they're in the Alps.
They're in the Alps. Their conversation to the Alps when they're on top of the mountain, and he and Greer Garson are on top of the mountain, and they warm each other in the middle of the Alps by sharing a wee jacket. It's it's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous set, but it's a fine little love story chapter of the film, and I didn't find myself looking at that too hard. I just enjoyed these characters on screen, and that I think is what this film is all about. So,
and the trail on the mountain looked like The Hobbit.
Yeah.
Like some of the most unsafe trails to be hiking on, especially in a fog.
And I love the sign. He comes across a sign that's like sticking out of the side of the mountain where there should be no trail, and it just says, in memory of he who was lost here. That was a good bit.
Essentially blocking the trail.
We haven't really actually talked about the story, and the story is of this English professor,
Mr. Chipping,
who, when we meet him, he is an elderly man. He's in his twilight years, and almost immediately, he falls asleep in front of the fire, and the rest of the film essentially is a flashback of his life. And so we get 63 years of his life from the day he arrives or he travels to this school, and all of the lives that he comes into contact with over the course of his time at the school. And his career changes from teacher to housemaster to retiree, and then eventually to come back and act as headmaster for so long. And so that's his story. It was pitched to me as a love story, so I went into it expecting it to be much more of a love story. And it turns out the relationship with Greer Garson is a very small part of the film, right in the middle.
Well, and if you look at the cover that is offered up to you when you rent it, it's of the dapper young Robert Donat and Greer Garson, and they look just like, a wonderful, sexy 1930s couple. There's nothing. I mean, he looks that way in the movie for about like 10 minutes, and the rest of the movie, he either has a great big bushy mustache, or he looks like Einstein.
Yes. So a little bit of misleading marketing on the poster. But I don't think that ended up hurting my viewing of it. I think it ended up still being a good story about the couple. And I think their relationship in the film actually, we have to have it. It has to be short. We have to kind of move through it in order to see how he adjusts to life afterward and kind of is allowed to really come out of his shell.
Yeah, and I think that's a strength. I mean, this is a most memorable person movie, but it is also a life at school movie, and we definitely get to see a lot of his life at school. I mean, really, the teachers at this period in time, they live on campus. I mean, it's that they are their job. I mean, essentially, that is all they do. And it's very interesting to kind of see that this is kind of how things were back in the 30s when Hilton wrote his book and when this film was made. I like seeing this character. I mean, despite issues I may have with the film, I really enjoy the character of Mr. Chips. I enjoy seeing him trying to figure out kind of what he's going to do. I mean, at the beginning, he's a mess as a teacher. He's very unsuccessful, and he has a lot to learn. And we get to kind of see him become a better teacher. And then through this relationship that he develops and this wife he marries, he ends up becoming kind of changing his direction a little bit. And I thought there was a real strength to that. I mean, there's definitely things that I think are, I think kind of storytelling candy for us to enjoy as far as kind of his perspective. And may not work that well in the world of teaching. But that being said, I really enjoy his character transformation and how it leads him on this journey and how he becomes this person that ends up meaning so much to people. And he's that guy that he was jealous of at the beginning, or maybe not jealous of, but he wished to be that type of person, that the students wanted to go talk to that person and chat with that professor. And then at the end of the film, he is that guy. And so I loved seeing that transformation with him.
I did too. And particularly just watching the generations of students that come in and out of his life that he is able to teach. And they make quite, I think, an able point of bringing these young kids in and making and reminding us, you have seen this kid before, and in many cases, because it's played by the same actor, now he has a different name, it's a new generation, but with Mr. Chippings, he has seen all of these people, he remembers them all, he remembers the way their pants fit, he remembers, that sounds really awful that I just said that, but he makes a comment about how their pants are too tight, because that makes the war sequence when England goes to war that much more sort of disheartening, because he's watching generations of people that he's taught, not just a class, but a whole sort of legion of people that he's taught go to war and die,
and professors
too, right?
Yeah. No, it's very touching. And, I thought there was something kind of powerful in that moment when he remembers his old friend. I'm blanking on the teacher's name, but the one that Paul Henreid played was Max, the German guy, right?
The Austrian, right? Who took him on his
who's the one who
trip.
Basically took him on his trip and where he met Catherine. And he ended up having to go serve, but for the other side. And people were commenting, gosh, I can't believe he brought that up because, he's on the other side. He must be going crazy in his old age or whatever they say. But there's something really touching about all of that. And just that moment, that's why I got so kind of choked up in that particular moment, because there's just so much when a person is talking about that, whether it's one of the collie boys who was killed or the two boys who fought in the yard, and then he kind of taught them a lesson, and then they were serving side by side. I mean, there's so much of that interesting element as kind of people grew up, and just those marks they left on him, and the marks he left on them.
And the marks, yes, on the institution of the school, because we've all probably got those where we, these teachers who are there, who are at these institutions, they've been there long before we got there. They will be there long after we've gone. But for this snapshot, this was a piece in the film that I thought was really the most touching. That, when he stands up at the front end of the Hogwarts Great Hall, and he says, I remember all of you as these boys, because that's all he gets of them, right? He gets these years of them, and then they're gone. And when they come back, he remembers them, but remembers them as boys. And I thought that was just a really touching sequence, and something I've heard, my own former teachers reflect too, that, last time I saw you and my entire memory of you is when you were 15.
Yeah.
So did you look at the book at all by James Hilton? Do you happen to have it on your shelf?
I don't have it on my shelf. If I did, it would have been sitting there unread, because I haven't read this one. But I did kind of have a vague idea of the film. I think I told you last time that oddly, I have the soundtrack to the 69 musical remake with Peter O'Toole. I have the soundtrack to that, although I've never seen that one. But at least I've heard the music, so I had a sense as to kind of what the story was through the music. But I didn't know what.
Do you know? I mean, what do you think of the music? And I don't want to sidetrack, because I watched in looking around for this film, I watched one track on YouTube from the movie, one musical number, and it was largely terrible.
Yeah, it's not my favorite. But I don't hate it. And I think it's one of those things where I've kind of listened to it enough times where I've kind of gotten used to it. It's a weird kind of music. I think they were trying to do something non-50s musical with it and doing something a little different. I mean, it was 1969, so they were changing things up a little bit.
This was his 13th book, James Hilton.
Right.
I've read nothing else of James Hilton.
I haven't either. I've seen a few adaptations of his other books. Lost Horizon, I've seen, which he wrote before this, and Random Harvest, which he wrote after this. And I enjoy those films. This was his first successful book. And I think it was just it was the story. I think it really drew people to it. I found this great quote. This is about the film, but I think it probably taps into the book and why the book was a success as well. This is by film critic, Philip Horn from the British newspaper The Telegraph. But why do stories about schools strike such a chord? School is a place of initiations, discoveries, loneliness, sociability, tests, and failures, full of dramatic possibility, where friends are made and betrayed and all too easily enemies, where bullies and victims abound, where rules of appalling artificiality circumscribe our every move, just waiting to be broken, and where a few teachers loom large in our consciousness as ogres or objects of worship. Schools are places of protection from the adult world and prisons from which we escape into the adult world. They are places where we grow up or fail to. And I thought that, I think that says a lot about this type of story, why Hilton's book was a success, and why people fell for this movie.
I think so too.
Still do.
Mr. Chips is a character. He's the archetype of the teacher, right? Not just the teacher at this particular boarding school, but he serves as the iconic role, who is there to shepherd success of the minds that come afterward. And I think that's something we are hardwired to tap into and be connected to.
This book was such a success that he actually wrote a sequel in 1938 called To You, Mr. Chips, which also I have not read. But I did find that one. It's on the think it's in the Australian, what is that thing called where they make those, the Gutenberg.
The Project Gutenberg.
Yeah, where it's all online. So you can read that book online. We can put that in the show notes.
Fantastic.
Although you have to track down the first book first.
Well, the first one ends.
It's pretty definitive.
Predictably.
Right.
I mean, you read the title and you kind of get where it's going to go.
Yep.
It's like Death of a Salesman.
And this is interesting because the title, the front of To You, Mr. Chips says a chapter of autobiography and some more stories of Mr. Chips.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's interesting how it just basically takes more elements of his life and just gives you more. And I think people were probably clamoring for more at the time.
Well, let's talk then a little bit about the adaptation. The adaptation done by 3 writers credited: R.C. Sheriff, Claudine West, and Eric Maschwitz. What's your take on the adaptation? How well do you think it works?
I think it works pretty well. I mean, I haven't read the book, so I can't speak to the specifics of the adaptation, but I do like I think the flashback structure here works well enough for the film. I mean, sometimes flashback can be a little bit of a cheat. And here I think it's a little bit, but I think it works in context of the story. Seeing the old Mr. Chips fall asleep and then basically kind of remember the whole movie for us is awfully handy. Was it necessary? Not really. I think you could have done it without it, but I think it works fine. But I do think, for the most part, I think they really streamlined this story to hit on a lot of really interesting points in his life and kind of move through it. I loved the brevity, how he's got that one scene where he goes to talk to the new headmaster who calls him in and wants him to, change his outfit and all this stuff and change everything. And he's basically kind of threatens to quit. And then we kind of, jump forward in a huge chunk of time to that guy talking about, how things have been since he's been there, which is now by this point years or whatever. And he talks about how Mr. Chips kind of set him straight, as it were, at the beginning. And it's like that was a really great way to kind of move us through that whole part of the movie without having to dwell on it for a long time. Well,
to dwell on it and not create sort of an artificial antagonist, right? I mean, I just really love that we didn't have this structure of, there's always the younger manager who comes in and looks like a dolt by making the kind old man do something that everybody else is against. And that becomes a different story. And it becomes a different story that was perilously close to happening in this film, right? Because he walks out of the office and then all the kids start talking. Oh, did you hear what they asked him to do? They said, take off your robe. And it's a ratty robe, you better retire. And they all did their thing. And you think, okay, it's become an uprising film. This is where all the kids are going to rise up and the faculty are going to rise up against this terrible boss that has come in and is forcing change on an institution. And that never happened. And I thought, hey, what a peaceful way to resolve this, that it's okay to showcase a character in power in a film and celebrate the fact that character gets to change his mind.
Yeah. I thought that was brilliant. I really enjoyed that part. So
yeah.
I completely agree with everything you just said.
Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Hemp Foods European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. Shall we move on to Sam Wood?
Yes.
Sam Wood is the director. Goodbye,
We've
Mr. Wood.
We've talked about him before.
Goodbye, Mr. Wood. What did we say?
I think we liked what he had done. He directed King's Row, which of course we chatted about. And I believe in our Gone with the Wind episode, we mentioned that he is the director who briefly took over for Victor Fleming when he had his nervous breakdown and had to step away from set for a number of days. And and then he's kind of directed a number of Marx Brothers films in his early days. So I think he does a good job here. I think he, again, paired with the writers, works well at moving the story forward pretty well. Sam Wood was, at one point, the president of the Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals. And that was an organization, of course, that conservative members of the Hollywood film industry formed in 1944 to defend the industry and the country against commies. So he was one of those guys.
He was one of those. Well, what are you going to do? We did like King's Row. We liked that old Ron Reagan turn.
We did.
I think we had some good things to say about that. And of this, too. It is a well-trod film. I don't see anything in this film that really tells me, having now watched a couple of others, King's Row specifically, that this is a Sam Wood thing. This, I think, really highlights the sort of fungibility of directors at the time, of many directors at the time. So I don't know. I don't yet feel like I have a portrait of Sam Wood's artistic identity.
No, I don't either. I mean, I do think in both cases, I mean, King's Row and this, he tells a nice story of a number of people kind of progressing through time. And I mean, King's Row is nowhere near the length of this film as far as like kind of the span of time it takes. But I do like the swath of people that he's portraying there and just kind of their relationships and everything. So, I mean, I like the characters that he brings, and I do find them all relatively authentic. And then, of course, there's the Marx Brothers ones, which they're not really authentic, but there's, clearly he had a good handle on how to work with those brothers in those films.
Right. And I think he bounced around between Paramount and MGM through the 20s and 30s, but generally was one of those guys.
Yeah.
To jump into production and jump back out. I think one of the notable roles of this film is the makeup, because of the way they age Mr. Chips. I think they did a really good job.
I had seen Robert Donat before in films like The 39 Steps, and I don't think I ever put two and two together, because I had seen stills from Goodbye, Mr. Chips, but never of him as a young man, always of him with his Einstein look. And so I don't think I realized it was the same guy. And I was really quite surprised when I was watching it. And I was like, man, I was really impressed with what they pulled off to age him. Because, I mean, he was born in 1905. So that means he was, 34 at the time they made this film, playing from 25 up to, 82 or something?
82, 83. Yeah. I was so impressed that I was super confused in this film. And I'm with you. I'd seen the 39 Steps, and then when he did the flashback, when he falls asleep as an old man and we see him again as a young man, I thought, well, okay, now Robert Donat's in the film. Honest to goodness, I did not know that he was in age makeup in the beginning. I thought that was a different actor.
It looks like a different actor. I mean, I was really pleasantly surprised with the work that it was Jack Dawn who did the hair and makeup on this, and really just did an amazing job of bringing this guy to life. And you have to give credit where credit is due. Jack Dawn definitely did it, but Robert Donat also really brought this character to life. And hair and makeup is one thing, but the actor also has to have a sense as to how to play it. And I felt that Donat had just a really strong personality that he developed with Chips. as he kind of went through life and had his changes, the life pre-Catherine and post-Catherine.
Yeah, to the point where it makes you wonder if he ended up pulling like a Christian Bale style kind of machinist like weight loss program. Like he really looks like a smaller man. So to his performance credit, Jack Dawn, we've actually sort of, but not really talked about Jack Dawn. He was on Wizard of Oz and Asphalt Jungle. Both films that we have talked about on this show. But with 223 credits, I'll bet it wouldn't take long to find others that we've talked about in our series, because he's been around.
Boy, has he. Yeah, he is.
Jack Dawn. Busy boy. He poisoned a lot of people on The Wizard of Oz.
It was him.
Just poisoned them. He actually was on that particular film, he was the makeup artist for Frank Morgan. All of the characters Frank Morgan played, and he was the creator of character makeups on that film.
Nice. That's very
cool. All right. So production. This film came as a package deal, right? When MGM bought this studio in Britain, it became the British branch of MGM, right?
Yes.
Is that how you understand it? Is that
Correct.
How I understand it?
That's how I understand it. Yeah.
Yank at Oxford or something, I think, and this film that were both part of the production deal. So it's MGM, but it was technically already in production, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that it was one of those things where it was that British division of MGM. I can't remember which film we talked about that on. I feel like it was it Only Angels Have Wings? I don't know why that's the one that comes to mind.
Maybe that was it.
I can't quite remember, but it was one of the films that we had chatted about and how it ended up getting made there through this whole process and getting made in England and everything. And
Denim Studios.
Yes.
That's what it was. Yes.
Right. And I think MGM may have had a little less control. I think that was something that some of the people liked over there. Even though, I mean, they still sent all their people over, and Eddie Mannix was still tracking the money and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that they smartly, they knew this was a British story and it needed to be made there. And I think that they found the right place for it. I mean, that's for sure. I mean, the Repton School.
It was not founded in 1492, rather 1559. They got their land and began construction in 1559 at the Repton School in it's beautiful. I mean, it is gorgeous. The interiors, I think, were all done in the Denham Studio lot, but the exterior is a school that is still in operation today. It really is. I mean, it's Hogwarts.
It's awesome, and it's just not to be confused with the Repton School in Dubai.
There's one in Dubai.
There is one in Dubai.
See, these days I'd probably rather go there.
Would you?
Oh, because I bet they could ski inside.
I bet it's warmer, except where you're skiing inside.
That's the truth. Editing done by the good Charles Friend, who was a Hitchcock guy and then an MGM contract editor.
Uh-huh.
Do you notice anything spectacular about the way this film was put together? We should talk about the cinematography too, which was
let's go bring these things. Freddie Young.
That's right.
Lawrence of Arabia.
So cinematography and yes, right. Well, see, and that's an interesting thing because there was nothing in here that surprised me visually. You know, like we talked about the across the stagecoach tire or wheel shot.
Yeah, right.
That was a stunning surprise. This I didn't find anything that just jumped out at me and said, "Wow, that is that's something you need to make note of. You need to get out your sketchbook and start drawing."
No, and that was my sense. It felt, but I mean, it fit the world, I guess, though. And you know, in my sense, I wasn't sure what sort of crazy, interesting cinematographic tricks they might be playing in this film. So I guess it didn't feel like it necessarily needed that. But at the same time, you know, I mean, geez, Young started in 1928, so he'd been working on a lot of films by the time he hit this in 1939. And so I had a lot of experience, but I'm guessing a lot of that stuff. I mean, I don't think I've seen any of his early stuff. I'm guessing it's all pretty straightforward, and I think this is. But, you know, all of it, I think, is great training ground for a cinematographer who kind of grows and becomes somebody who is filming things like Lawrence of Arabia and Dr. Zhivago. And I mean, geez, even going into James Bond territory with You Only Live Twice.
Yeah.
And, definitely doing a lot of big and flashier things.
Yeah, this is very small, and I think that's one of the things that you get in this film that I think that he does really well, which is the intimacy of the relationships between these boys and the boys and their teachers. I mean, there are some of the initial shot where he is, or the initial sequence, I should say, when he's in the classroom. He goes into the classroom for the first time, and the kids go bananas. Right? It's big and crazy and slapstick. But as soon as he gets control of those relationships and they start, we start seeing them come to the house for tea and kind of develop a more intimate role in their lives, I think we see a little bit of the way the camera changes and impacts that, to all the way to the very end where he has tea and cakes with the youngest of the Collie kids, right? Sitting in front of the fire. And I actually really loved that sequence because of just how long they held on the tea making ceremony, which I thought was really beautifully sweet. And it was better to be able to see them go through that period. I sit there and ask myself, if I feel like the thing is overlong, what would I cut? And the low hanging fruit are sequences like this, where you're just watching him make tea. And yet in that sequence, I feel like I needed it. I needed to see him bring that boy into this world, in such a warm and caring way. I thought that was really beautifully shot. Yeah,
absolutely. I agree. There wasn't a whole lot that stood out, but it was moments like that. And I mean, I liked the moments like where they were reading names and stuff, and in kind of that the big school hall, and it was just a little darker. And I think that they worked to capture the story in a strong visual way that didn't need to be overt.
They do a number of sequences that are sort of highlighted by double exposure, these crazy fades where, particularly we get a little bit of his life flashing before his eyes that's like exposed on the wall, and crossfades in and out. We do a lot of the kids, sort of some of the montages of kids coming in the doors, naming their names, growing up.
Yep.
How'd that stuff work for you?
I thought it all worked fine. The passage of time element. I thought it was nice finding a way to kind of show that. I'm torn because I think we've both said, the film had some pacing issues, but as I think back and I'm like, gosh, I'm not quite sure exactly what I would cut. Yes, you're right. There's that low hanging fruit, but there's something about those moments that kind of add to those elements of fleshing somebody's life out. And so I don't know. I feel like I'd be hard pressed to actually figure out what to actually cut from this. I'd have to really watch it again with a fine-tooth comb to really start picking at things.
That's exactly my problem. The only thing I can come back to now is not a cut, but an addition. I mean, we let's talk just a little bit about Greer Garson, because she's in it for not really very long in the scope of the film. He is lamenting the loss of a job. He didn't get a job, a promotion to housemaster. They're leaving him as a teacher when he is the next in line for this particular role at the school. And to let off steam over the summer, he joins his friend, Paul Heinrich, who is he's a German teacher from Austria, to go on a walking tour of Austria and, let off steam. And while there, fog sets in on a mountaintop, and he hears a woman yodeling, and he goes to her rescue.
He hears her saying, "Hello!"
Yeah.
Hello! It's not even yodeling.
It's not even a yodel. That's right.
But to him, it's a cry of distress.
It's a cry of help, right? And so he goes up to see her, and she's eating sandwiches on top. And we've already talked about the ridiculousness of the hike that he has to do to get there. And they have a lovely moment.
I mean, really, it's like a Donald Duck cartoon, or Goofy.
It is.
Goofy. It's like watching Goofy go hiking.
It is the way, and that is, we should say about the cinematography, the sequences where he's like hanging, where his torso is out of the top of the frame and all you see are his legs wildly kicking rocks down, trying to scramble up the side of the mountain. It's hysterical and ridiculous, but it ends up being a sweet meeting. between these two. And it ends up... Go ahead.
I was going to say, and it was so easy to fall in love with Greer Garson.
Oh, she's delightful.
Yes, she is.
She's really delightful. So we meet her and we get to the experience of her on the top of this mountain. And then they come down the mountain, and over the next, 15 minutes or so, they're in a bit of a chase. She's on a bicycle tour across Europe with one of her friends, and he's on this walking tour, and they end up finding each other again on the Danube. And we hear the story about how the Danube is only blue if you are in love, but to everybody else, it's brown. And that ends up being a sweet little bit of script where we see the two gentlemen telling that story, and then we see the women just after a long sort of tracking shot sideways. We end up coming into the girls who are having their conversation, and she says, I expected the Danube to be blue. She says, why, it is blue, Greer Garson says. And it's so sweet. And then everybody's in love with her.
Yeah, because she's pretty great.
Yeah.
This is her first film. It's crazy.
Crazy.
Yeah.
She was great.
She's great. And, looking at her filmography, I haven't seen a whole lot more of her. I've seen Random Harvest. I think that is actually it. Mrs. Miniver's always been on my list of films to watch, but I've never gotten around to it. But I mean, geez, she had quite a busy career after this. But, no, she's easy to love. And I think that as the human person to kind of break Mr. Chipping and turn him into Mr. Chips and find that element of humanity that he can use to kind of grow and become the person that he will. I thought that she was just wonderful for that.
She was wonderful. They end up falling in love. She moves in with him at the school and becomes the school mom, right? And starts inviting the kids over for cake and tea, and encourages him to tell more Latin puns. It gets the kids laughing, and he becomes kind of that's what causes him or moves him to become a little bit of the faculty hero. And then she gets pregnant and dies during childbirth along with the child. We never see them. We don't actually experience the death of at childbirth. It's all seen through the eyes of the perspective of the house help and of Mr. Chips. And the first thing he does when he finds out his wife and newborn baby died in childbirth is go teach a class on April Fool's Day. That is heartbreaking. It's a heartbreaking sequence. And again, it's one of those that surprised me how delicately they diffused it in the sequence. We think that the kids are all going to get away with this great joke, and a child comes to the rescue and tells the rest of the boys, this is what happened, lay off, and they all lay off.
Yeah.
I thought it was just really sweet.
It was very touching how stuff like that worked. It just showed that, you don't have to have these elements of real discordance in a film to make it work. You can build to those moments, but then you can find other ways to kind of address them. And I think it can still make for a strong story.
Totally agree. So she was in and out of the picture, this Greer Garson, and yet she ended up playing that sort of pivotal role that turns, as you say, Mr. Chippings into Mr. Chip.
And it's the wonderful sort of character that once they're in the film, you can feel their presence even once they're gone. It's like she is so clearly there still, even though she's not ever on screen again after that moment.
Right. And we've talked a little bit about Robert Donat already.
Yeah, he's another one of those guys where I was like looking at his filmography, I'm like, man, I think it may only be this and the 39 Steps of his that I've seen. And I feel kind of bad about that because he's certainly done a number of things. I mean, it's not as heavy as other people, only 22 credits. I guess he did a lot of stage work. But I really enjoy him. But this is the film that really he is known for. I think this in 39 Steps, but I think 39 Steps is more just, hey, it's a Hitchcock film. This is like his film. He won a Best Actor Oscar for it, which was a little controversial at the time because so many people wanted Clark Gable or Jimmy Stewart to win. But, he ended up walking away with it, even though he technically didn't walk away with it because he wasn't at the ceremony.
I also saw the 39 Steps. I would not have been able to tell you that he was in it.
Yeah, that's kind of how that film is, right? It's a Hitchcock
I saw
film.
it because it was a Hitchcock film, right?
Right. I think the line that Donut said about his part, he said, as soon as I put the mustache on, I felt the part, even if I did look like a great Airedale come out of a puddle.
Which is true, and it felt really lopsided most of the film. Like, it felt like somebody put it on just a little bit sideways.
It looked like one of those mustaches that he could it was almost like a I Dream of Jeannie, like he could wiggle it back and forth sort of mustache and cast spells.
Absolutely.
It was so funny.
It was good. We've talked about Paul Henreid.
Have we talked about him?
Well, no, just a few minutes ago.
Oh, yeah. Right. I don't think we've ever talked about him in the show.
We've never talked about him in this show. Now, that is true. He plays the compatriot. I mean, he plays the trusting friend who befriends Mr. Chippings and accompanies him on his spiritual journey.
I love Paul Henreid. I think he's a fantastic actor, although I've seen him in very few things also. But now Voyager, I love, and I think that's on our list of films we're going to be talking about this year. And Casablanca, of course.
Casablanca, right.
He's just, he's got a great face. He just works really well in the film. And he was in Exorcist 2, which I didn't even know. And that cracks me up. I'm going to have to watch that now, just so I can see him.
Anyway, and then we have Terry Kilburn. He plays all of the collies.
I don't really know much about him, but I thought the whole idea of having Kilburn come in and play, it was John Colley and then 3 different Peter Colleys, 3 different generations of Peter Colley. I thought that was just so fun. I loved the idea of having one actor kind of play this same character, which really helped kind of connect Chips to his students over time. I thought that was just a brilliant idea.
I thought it was really great and really clever. And again, it also works against the film a little bit because it's the same guy that I found myself thinking, God, okay, where are we? Are we doing a flashback in a flashback now? Like, I'm not entirely sure where I am in the narrative. And it was only at the end that I sort of realized that I get where all these people are in time. And maybe it's because we just saw Batman vs. Superman and they broke that rule that now all I can think about is we must be in an Inception style flashback.
Which flashback am I in?
Yeah.
That's kind of funny.
That's what it felt like.
I liked it a lot. I mean, I do feel there was an element of levity that went along with it that I think helped, because in a film like this, you want to kind of balance that comedy with the sentimental. And I think having something like that, aside from just helping kind of connect to a generation as you get the story, it kind of is funny, and it just kind of made it lighten up a bit, I think.
Well, yeah, and that it's not taking itself too seriously.
Right, exactly.
Which I thought was really nice. Richard Adensell did the music. Is this a score that you wanted to make sure you had in your collection?
No, I didn't run out to go get this one. I mean, I thought it was fine. I guess I didn't think too much of it. I don't know. It didn't strike me. It didn't leave me one way or the other. I mean, I think that, he kind of wrote the school song that you hear throughout the film. And, I think it works well to kind of connect it in that way, but it didn't wow me or anything.
I think it's that school song is only of note because they make it of note in the thing. They actually call it out in the script. There was nothing in here that felt like the music was a part of the thing. There was no particular Mr. Chips theme that stuck to me that really helped me identify who this guy is.
But I will say, I didn't hear any other like old show tunes or anything like we've been hearing in so many films. So it's interesting.
That's a relief.
Yeah, so it's interesting to kind of see, this is a film with an actual original score.
Adensell, it was a name that was new to me, but he's got a number of credits, including, Christmas Carol, Prince and the Showgirl, Blithe Spirit, the adaptation of The Noel Coward. Yeah, he's got a lot of stuff.
Done a lot of stuff, nothing that I'm familiar with. So it's Under Capricorn, I guess I've seen that in one of Hitchcock's lesser films.
Mm-hmm.
That may be the only film of his other than this that I've actually seen now. So there you go.
It is hard to believe we've been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
You're telling me producing this show week after week is so much fun, but it does require a lot of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
The Originals page at thenextreel.com/originals links to the source material for all of our adapted film discussions. Purchasing through our links supports the show.
In Season 13, we explore various awards categories and the films nominated in them.
We wrapped up our 1940 Best Picture series with adaptations of Mice and Men from John Steinbeck and Wuthering Heights from Emily Bronte's novel, not to mention the play Dark Victory by George Brewer Jr. and Bertram Bloch.
The 1947 Academy Award adapted screenplay series featured Anna and the King of Siam, based on Margaret Langdon's book, plus The Best Years of Our Lives, Brief Encounter, and The Killers.
The 1952 cinematography nominees included Death of a Salesman and A Streetcar Named Desire, A Place in the Sun, based on both a play and a book, and Strangers on a Train, based on Patricia Highsmith's first novel.
So many great movies based on books and plays, like Beckett, The Pumpkin Eater,
A Boy and His Dog, Rollerball,
The Princess Bride, Congo, The Scarlet Letter,
Jackie Brown, The Deep End, The Gray, The Woman in Black,
and Top Gun Maverick, which I'm very much looking forward to revisiting.
Get the source books at thenextreel.com/originals.
Start your next read or reread from the movies we've covered. Visit thenextreel.com/originals today. Well, we already talked about the fact that this was voted 72nd greatest British film ever by BFI. What else is it known for?
Well, this film was one of the popular ones in 1939. It did get nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Screenplay Writing, Best Film Editing, and Best Sound Recording. So, I mean, walked away with 7 nominations, although Gone with the Wind won all of those, except for Best Sound Recording, which went to When Tomorrow Comes, and, of course, Best Actor, which, like I said, was a little bit of a surprise to quite a number of people because they really felt that it was either going to be Clark Gable or Jimmy Stewart. And Gable actually went to the award. I didn't know this, and we haven't talked about this at all in any of our 1939 episodes yet. But apparently at the time, the Price Waterhouse would give the winners to like the newspapers, and they would say, okay, but you can't publish any of this until such and such time because we won't have announced it at the ceremony yet. Well, the LA Times, they leaked the winners before they were supposed to. And so a good number of the actors walked into the ceremony already knowing if they had won or not. Clark Gable being one of them, Betty Davis being another. But they still went, they went and it was all part of the thing. They just obviously were a little kind of, I don't know how they felt. I think Olivia de Havilland also, I hear that she ran into the bathroom, even though she already knew that Hattie McDaniel won for Best Supporting Actress. She ran into the bathroom bawling when they called out Hattie's name. And,
Jeez.
She had to go be straightened out. But, so after this was the reason that now PricewaterhouseCoopers does not reveal it to anybody. They are the only people who know the winners, and nobody else will know until it is announced on the air.
Because you never trust an embargo, kids. That is the lesson. Embargoes cannot be trusted.
That's right. It may work that one time, but then after that, it ruined it for everybody. So, way to go, LA Times.
This is why we can't have nice things. It was remade in 1969 with Peter O'Toole and Petula Clark.
Yes.
That's the musical bit.
Yep. And then also 1984, a BBC TV miniseries with Ray Marsden and a TV movie made for TV for Masterpiece Theatre in 2002 with Martin Clunes.
I haven't seen any of them. And based on my exploration of the music and that scene of the 1969, I'm probably not in a big hurry.
I think that Greer Garson, she wasn't, there was really no chance that she was going to get Best Actress. When you're up against Vivien Leigh and Betty Davis in this particular year, there's really no chance. I honestly felt like...
Up against these people... And you were a great performance in a film that you were in for like 20 minutes.
Well, and that's my point. I feel that, I mean, yes, she's ostensibly the only actress in the film, so may as well call her best actress. But I really feel with a part that's that small, it's like, it almost feels like a supporting part. And if she was supporting, would she have walked away with an award that night? I don't know, but it's interesting to think about.
With all that said and done, how did it do?
This film, thanks again to Eddie Mannix for tracking all this information for me. It did okay for itself. It cost about $1 million to make, which is about $17.5 million in today's dollars. Not too bad, with a print and advertising budget of just under $900,000. So all told, adjusted, this film ended up costing about $32.5 million to make. This film ended up grossing here in the U.S. and Canada about $1.7 million and about $1.5 million internationally. So all told, it grossed, adjusted, about $54.5 million. So this film ended up making an adjusted profit per finished minute of about $200,000. So it did pretty good. On our list of 1939 films that we have talked about so far on this show, it's actually fourth. Gone with the Wind, Wizard of Oz, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington are all in front of it. And of course, a few of them we don't have any financials on, so they may have been better, but it's hard to say. Roaring Twenties and Only Angels Have Wings are still kind of mysteries.
So when you take out the fact that it was made in 1939, where is it on our list?
138.
Really, it's didn't crack the top half.
Did not crack the top half. It definitely didn't. It's smack dab between The Bad Seed and Ninotchka.
Auspicious coupling.
Yeah. So, it's
right.
It did better than Big Fish in the adjusted profit per finished minute.
It's always too soon.
Sorry.
Just it's always too soon. It will
always
be too soon. Always. Forever. It will always be too soon.
Come on.
I'm calling John August. Head over to flickchart.com and you go ahead and get your yellow stack of Post-its and flip through to the new account that you created a few weeks ago. That is your name plus asterisk plus 1939 films of the next reel, and then the password, which is soup, and log in with that, because that's the one you want to use.
That's scary.
And log in with that, because that's what you're going to want to do. You're going to want to do a little search for Goodbye, Mr. Chips, and get ready to start ranking. And that first pairing, Filmo a Filmo, Goodbye, Mr. Chips versus
Filmo a Filmo. We're going to look at Goodbye, Mr. Chips, or we knew this was coming, Pete. It's right in the middle. Stagecoach.
Goodbye, Mr. Chips.
Definitely Goodbye, Mr. Chips.
Yeah.
Or Tot Ziens, Mr. Chips, as the poster says. Goodbye, Mr. Chips, or Boogie Nights.
Boogie Nights.
I've got to go Boogie Nights. Goodbye, Mr. Chips, or The Killing. I'm going to do The Killing.
The Killing. Nice.
Goodbye, Mr. Chips, or The Bourne Identity.
Bourne Identity.
A little bit of Bourne, yes, indeed. Yeah. Goodbye, Mr. Chips. I wonder if this is going to bump Stagecoach out.
I know already.
Yeah, Goodbye, Mr. Chips, or Viridiana.
Goodbye, Mr. Chips.
Yeah, I'm going to say Goodbye, Mr. Chips. Goodbye, Mr. Chips, or The Departed. I'm The Departed. Despite my issues with that film and my love for Infernal Affairs, I still do enjoy that one. It's going to be one that I would find myself returning to more often.
I think if I were sitting down with them side by side, I would probably put on Goodbye, Mr. Chips.
Yeah?
Yeah, it makes me feel better. And it doesn't have the same problems that I had with The Departed.
Okay.
I was kind of mad at The Departed, and if I have to sit down and watch, would I rather watch Donut or Wahlberg?
Oh, yeah, you did hate that Wahlberg.
My goodness, Andy. I'm full PTSD on that.
You are. You really are. Well, let's take it to the map then.
Here we go.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
Paper.
Scissors.
God.
Sorry.
You'd think I should know. I wonder. I'm gonna go back and put that on a spreadsheet. How many times does Andy go scissors on his first? I'll bet it's every time.
You're going to,
because I always go paper.
That's awesome.
Oh,
that's really funny. Goodbye, Mr. Chips, or High Noon.
Goodbye, Mr. Chips.
Yeah, Goodbye, Mr. Chips, for sure. And there we are, Pete. Number 107.
So I wonder what that does to push the what the new blocker is.
Well, it depends on, it's kind of the yin and yang. If we drop something below Stagecoach next time, then Stagecoach will stay there. If we keep adding to the top half, then Stagecoach will slowly get pushed down.
Okay.
We'll be back to the Oh Brother block.
Oh, the Oh Brother block. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Legendary Oh Brother block. Okay, so Andy, it was a good film, but did it crack the elusive 5-star for you? I say elusive. You're actually kind of easy.
I am pretty easy on movies, but
you're a cheap date.
This one I didn't give 5 stars, but I gave it 3.5 stars.
There you go.
Yeah,
all right. See, I buy 3.5 stars.
It's a movie I liked.
That's actually where I am.
Yeah, it's a movie I liked. It's not a movie I loved, but I liked it well enough, and it still touched me and moved me in all the right ways.
As it did for me as well. And I actually came in right at 3.5 stars for me, which feels like slightly weighted in the happy direction. And I do that for the mustache. But it's a middling film that I look forward to actually watching again down the road. I'm not going to, binge on it, but I did enjoy it, and I will see this film again.
Well, this was a film I watched.
I actually think that people should see this film. I think it's a film that there are enough people I've talked to this week that we're doing this film, and they say, "Oh, I haven't seen that." Well, you should see that. See this film. It's worth seeing. That's my pitch.
This was a film I watched, and I said, this will be a good film to watch with the kids when they're a little older and they can appreciate something like this, and as they're kind of reflecting on their life in school.
Yes. And how this is what it could have been. I could have sent you to a school like this.
That's right. Yeah, we didn't even talk about, this was the days of canings and just like, taking a whole class. Oh, you're all going to stay in detention. And
that was my whole stunts section. We didn't even talk about that either. Reference canings. Right. When that old headmaster says, "Everybody report in a line in front of my office in alphabetical order and enter my office every 3 minutes."
Oh, that's my goodness.
Fantastic. Oh my goodness. Those were the days.
Those were the days.
Until then, I think I've got to go to bed.
Well, there's a fog rolling in, Pete. That means it's the perfect time to head up that mountain with no gear. Maybe I can even find me a damsel in distress.
Let's go up from the bottom, Andy.
Oh, okay.
Why don't you begin?
Well, my 1 star by Sam Koo on November 7th, 2014. I don't think Sam knows what the star ranking system means and how it works. 1 star, Sam Koo says. The hero acted most brilliantly, so did Garson. That doesn't sound like a 1-star review, Sam.
Maybe Sam thought that it was the white stars that were the good ones.
Right.
And not the filled-in yellow ones. Starts with 5. Well, there are not very many 1-star reviews, as we discovered, that don't talk about what a terrible case the DVD is or the Amazon's performance as a supplier. And there are very few 2 stars, one of them that talks about the stupidness of DVDs, and one that brings something up that we did not talk about. And so I hate to get all substantive in this post-credits sequence, Andy, but I think we have to.
Yes. By
Radad Indy, who says, Pacifism 1939. I'm surprised that most of the reviews don't mention the pacifist theme of the film. The film is well done and quite watchable on its own terms, but those terms are so tragically wrong, pacifism in 1939, that it's tough to get past the unintended sadness and irony. For a movie that's aged better, see Mrs. Miniver. We didn't talk about the pacifist theme at work in the film, but specifically. I think we brought up the sequences that really highlight it. We brought up the sequences that highlight the acts of violence and the acceptance of violence and bullying in the film, and how those things are touched on by the film itself. But this is also in its own way a war movie, and their approach to the war, their touch to the war, I think is really representative of a different take on the times.
Yeah, it's there's something about the look at war from the people who don't go and serve, and it's really just like the people who serve and come back as heroes, or the people who don't come back and are referenced in the reading of the names. So there's something interesting about that, yeah.
And the people who don't go and live with the shame of not going. Even our protagonist, who says, I didn't go because I'm just too old.
Right.
But I would have gone if I could. And that's not something you expect because of the way the film sort of handles the act of violence and the readings of the names. And that I think it's really interesting the way they did it. And finally, the scene we didn't talk about was the wonderful experience of Mr. Chips, reading to the kids during a bombing run. Not late one night. I think that was a terrific sequence of him trying to get through that. So I think it's a really interesting film to watch through that lens. And so when you go watch this film, people, think about pacifism and this theme of pacifism in 1939. It's an interesting take. Thanks, Amazon. Well done.
Thanks again for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the episode. If you'd like to learn more about membership, head on over to thenextreel.com/membership, where you can see how you can support the show.
Thanks, everybody.